Hi, communication students. I want to give you a short lesson on the do's and don'ts of creating an informative presentation on a great communicator. I have used as an example Mark Twain because nobody has him as a topic. So I want to begin with generating a list of possible points that you could make about your communicator. And I want you to see that I have a brainstormed list on Mark Twain. Here's a bunch of random stuff about him as a communicator. He was a travel writer and an advocate for travel, so he was an advocate. He was an advocate for ending racism, too, in the United States. He was a novelist who challenged racism, so even The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn could be considered part of his communication style. Beyond writing books, though, he was a Chautauqua speaker, and what does that mean? Well, a Chautauqua speaker, Chautauqua events were like public education. Anybody could attend. They were TED Talks for the masses, and without technology. They happened in the 19th century. So I've just sort of covered bullet number 3 here. You know, a sort of sad fact about him is that he managed his identity. After his wife died, he wore nothing but a white suit. He used to joke that he wore a white suit for hygiene purposes, but I think that it was probably more personal. It's still a topic among Mark Twain scholars, you know, what was the symbolic value of the suit, and many said it was his overt attempt to not publicly grieve for the loss of his family. He lost his wife, he lost several children. He had quite a dark end to the end of his life. And he was also an American abroad, and he supported himself by giving these Chautauqua-styled speeches. He was not concerned only, though, with his own personal public image. He was really greatly concerned with the American identity. So, again, coming back to this concept that he was the ultimate American. And a public speaker, not a mass communicator. This is a good distinction. He was speaking during a time when there was no radio, when mass communication would have been being a newspaper writer, perhaps, or writing for newspapers, and there was no other real venue for mass communication. He was great with the power of language, and a couple of things he did. He used a lot of colloquial speech, informal English, speaking for everyday people, and he avoided disruptive language like name-calling or being super negative. Now, the worst thing you could do is just say, okay, let's choose 3 random things. Those are the things I'm going to go with. No, back up. Try to find an overarching point that you can make under which your 3 supporting statements, your 3 supporting points will serve to illustrate. So the main point that I've come up with is really, what's Mark Twain most known for? Well, I'm going to say that it's for being a great communicator who managed his personal and the American identity abroad, and that he did this in specific ways that I could illustrate that tie into other things. He was concerned with the American identity, and this is something that I would perhaps focus on with my research. Why was he concerned about this? Well, Americans didn't necessarily have a great reputation in the 19th century. We had been a slaveholding state. He had lived and wrote about a time when slavery existed. We were known to be uneducated, kind of rubes, and his white suit, I think, was part of creating a new vision of an American, a different sort of character that Europeans maybe did not fully understand. He also presented himself in ways that ordinary people could maybe understand by using certain speech. Now, speech and managing identity, these are concepts from the text. So I would expect if you had Mark Twain, you would use this. He also avoided doing some things like flaming public officials by name, and so I think he used a lot of humor to address difficult topics. So, all right. He, as a second point, engaged audiences in moral reflection by questioning conventions. Much of the way that he did this was by humor. So I want to make sure that I would cover humor as part of how he accomplished this particular goal. And he also used public communication in the form of the Chautauqua style circuit. And I think this is important because he really was focused on ordinary Americans and how he addressed people. So I am going to try to unify my presentation under identity management as the overarching communication goal. But I'm not going to end with the text there. I'm going to look for examples to support my point of view. Okay, so I want you to get started on brainstorming your own list. Avoid choosing 3 random things and really work on integrating some communication concepts that the great communicator used throughout his or her public communication. Okay, I've gone over 7 minutes. Hope you're still paying attention. Time for you to get to work.